Uh, and also our team from Orangery for their support as well. Thank you very much. Okay.
Well done.
That's fine.
We start the panel discussion. What we will do is we'll have a few questions for the panel, and then we'll take some of your questions as well. A lot of interesting subjects were talked about today, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. What we'll try to do is start a conversation with the panel and see where it goes. Al-Madani, as I mentioned before, he's the CEO of corporate.
Where's my seat?
He's the how's that? So, okay. He's the CEO of corporate support services for RTA. Since 1990 until the end of 2000, he was the information technology industry at Dubai municipality, where he progressed through a variety of roles. Abdullah pursued his career in industry in Dubai municipality, and then moved on to Roads and Transport Authority. He was selected as Director of Information Technology and progressively moved a few months in May 2006. He was appointed as Chief Executive Officer for the Corporate Support Services sector. He's one of the two headquarters sectors providing services to all of the 5 RTA agencies and headquarters. He is also a member of the board and directly reporting to the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of the board, His Excellency Mutar Al-Tayr. Mr. Abdullah also holds a bachelor degree in Management Information System from the University of Colorado, Denver, and he successfully completed Mohammed bin Rashid program for leadership development. We were lucky to have a workshop being conducted by our next panelist. Mr. Rafiq is chairman of the ISACA Governmental and Regulatory Agencies for Task Force in Asia. He is IT governance and assurance professional from Bangalore, India, experience over 25 years as a CFO, CIO, IT implementer, IT consultant, IT auditor, and COVID trainer. He's been using COVID since 1996 and is a globally recognized trainer on COVID. He's a well-known COVID evangelist and has conducted more than 100 days of training on COVID for ISACA and its chapters, as well as for public, private, and government companies. He's one of the earliest official accredited trainers of COVID by ISACA USA. He's also a member of the task force which developed ISACA latest certification, CGEIT, which is the Certificate in Governance Enterprise IT. And also presently a member of CGIEIT Certification Board, ISACA USA. Thank you very much, Mr. Rafiq, to be with us today. So we'll start the panel discussion, and I would ask a question, and if each of you would answer this question, and it's a question I think in the mind of most of the people here. Because of the financial crisis that the world is going through, what do you feel is the impact and the different views that you have? Mr. Rafiq?
Assalamu alaikum. I remember I come from India. In 2000, we had this Y2K problem. And the Y2K problem was a big challenge for most of the developed countries. But for India, it was a big opportunity because they said they were actually providing services to various IT companies. The reason why India was not impacted to such a big extent as far as Y2K was concerned was that India was a little behind in information technology. So they found that they did not have to pay the same price to learn the same lessons. But now you find on account of the globalization that the whole world is one global village. I have traveled across the world and I have been involved with ISACA in promoting COBIT and IT governance. And I've seen even in the best of the developed countries, IT governance is a new concept. Quite often there is a doubt whether IT governance is a new fad, a new concept which is implemented, which is brought in by the IT consulting companies or by the professionals to promote themselves. But I have seen, based on my own experience, that IT governance is the need of the day. If you want to successfully thrive in a globalized world, you need to have systems in place. You need to have processes in place. It's important that you need to have a governance system in place. It's not possible, just like they say, you can't buy health by throwing money. Similarly, you can't buy governance by spending money. The most important aspect, especially in terms of IT governance, is the involvement of the senior management, the board of directors, in promoting how information technology is used within the enterprise. If you look at the concept of information technology governance itself, it has three primary aspects, and that I think is actually gels with the theme of the conference, Sustaining IT Governance Culture. You can't implement IT governance just as a one-off project, where you think you have spent the money, you have assigned the responsibility to somebody, and the project is complete. No, IT governance is a continuous process. And when you want to implement IT governance, it's important that you need to have a continuous monitoring system in place. What IT governance provides, if you go back to the definition, is the entrusting of this responsibility with the senior management. If you look at any organization, and if you find IT is the lifeblood of the organization, if you remove information technology from the organization, you find the organization cannot survive. And IT is used for providing business, for providing all the services. If that is the case, it's important that management of IT is also one of the things which is not just relegated or delegated to the IT department, but it's also something which is managed by the senior management in providing leadership and direction.
But Rafiq, let me ask you, now since the assumption that we don't have resources, how will that impact the company's decision for IT governance?
If you are using information technology and a substantial amount of money is being spent on information technology, it's important that you need to spend money on managing it. And that's where information technology comes in. In India, it's like they say, when you buy a cow, you don't worry about the cost of the rope. You have to invest on buying the rope because the rope is what helps you control the cow. Similarly, if you want to manage information technology effectively, get the benefit out of information technology, then you need to have a system of IT governance.
But Theo, for example, now there are so many projects that Dubai World is going for, and they of course have the resources issue like all of the companies now. How do you feel that's going to impact IT governance for a company similar to Dubai World?
First and foremost, before I answer the question, is that this crisis that we are facing, that's why it's always referred to the 1929 depression, is actually global. And as our leaders in Dubai and UAE has already said, we are not alone, right? So as a player in the global economy, we will be impacted in one way or the other. But the good thing is that the system within the Dubai environment is going to shield us for the next 2 years, which is going to be the duration, in my opinion, of this crisis before the economy of the world begin to recover. And we as a company, since I'm pushing for IT to be aligned to business, we have to be one step behind our business front line. So in this case, the question that he is asking, how are we going to serve the businesses as the economy unwinds itself? It is actually going to be deflating. How do we do that? The answer is that there is no one question and one answer to this, purely because, as we say, each businesses in Dubai, including Dubai World, including Dubai Holding, EMA, is going to meet this new challenge. That's why a new committee was made about 2 days or 3 days ago. And it is through the summation effort of all the players within this industry that we are going to meet the challenge. I come to that. this is where system and processes is going to save us. We have good government, we have rich resources. What is lacking? The lacking will be, are we able to come together as a system to tackle this crisis? I was talking to Abdullah. RTA is one of the backbone of the economy today, because NAQ, for example, and DP World uses their infrastructure to ensure that logistic flow, ensures that Atlantis celebration, without the road system, there will be no celebration, by the way, right? So back to the challenge in this crisis is actually an opportunity for the government of Dubai, which is all of you guys here, to now start to think to be efficient. How do you run more and do more? How do you build more roads faster with lesser resources, so that when the economy is going to go up, we will be ready to build the next Palm Jumeirah. We'll be ready to build the next Palm Dera. The cycle is very, very common. This is one. The last one was the .com, which is 8 years ago, during the year 2000, crossing the millennium. The next one could be another 10 years or 8 years from now, and this time it could be another one. But whichever is the case, as any economist will tell you, right? Buy low, sell high. So since we are at the low period, let us come together as a country, as a city, put our infrastructure together by implementing good practices and processes. This will tie up when people are trying to fight for survival. At least now the city has enough money to build basic infrastructure. When that infrastructure is ready, then we will be at the position to outpace the market when it recovers in about 24 months' time.
24 months? That's good. We'll take your word for that, Trio. Abdullah, tell me now, everybody has the assumption that the government departments don't worry about the budget. There's always money for the government. But you being in RTA and responsible now for these services, you will be under pressure for the different projects that you have. And part of your responsibility, of course, is IT governance. So when that pressure comes, how will you handle it? What will you do?
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Coming back to your first question, I just want to say that this is not a recession. This is a global financial collapse. So it's a big thing. It's not an easy thing. It's global. In the past, many of these things were happening, were regional based or country based. This time is much bigger. It's affecting the entire globe. So this is a financial crisis. Yes, it's a financial crisis. What we need to do, I add my voice to my colleagues here. One thing that we need to look at is the infrastructure. Today, big cities, well-established infrastructure cities always continue and come out of these problems after a while because they have a solid infrastructure in place. Looking at that infrastructure, I want to relate that to the IT, okay? So if we have a good infrastructure and a good governance in IT, then you should be safe. So from now on, you need to concentrate on really strengthening your governance and infrastructure. And another word is reusability. Try to consolidate, reuse. That's a major thing, major factor that will also help you have a stronger infrastructure, a stronger, let's call it applications or modules, and that in return will give you a solid place to work from. So therefore you will avoid spending more money into this time. However, governance is the main thing for IT. It's not something difficult to achieve. It's easy if you make it simple. If you make it simple for your people to understand it, they will know it. And coming back to Theo's presentation earlier, I want to insist on we as IT, why don't we do our things? Why don't we computerize ourselves first, okay? Because that will help a lot in the government's thing. That's I think I'm...
Okay, well, Bill, from your experience with board directors, do you, carrying on the same theme of the pressure now because of the financial situation, do you see that most board directors see IT governance as a luxury, not necessarily a necessity of the overall benefit of the corporation?
I think the worry in a time of crisis is that there's a tendency, a very human tendency of everybody to just pull down the shutters and clam up and try not to do anything or to stop doing things. Whereas, and I think back to a couple of old adages, IBM used to say every problem is an opportunity and a crisis creates opportunities. And we're also seeing in the world an enormous redistribution of wealth taking place at the moment, and people coming to the realisation that there has to be a reassessment of priorities, because governments internationally have fuelled the expansion of credit and debt, which has created a belief that there was a demand for goods and services, which in turn led to investment in those goods and services, which won't be sustained in the current period going forward until that confidence is built again. The governments have to learn not to be too expansionary, and investors need to rethink those projects that now won't be able to get the payback that they thought they would get when they invested in them. So it's a time of reappraisal and reassessment. This is what should take place at the moment, and the advice for board directors is to think of IT as an enabler. To use the other phrase, we used to say, think or work smarter, not harder. And the adage is very true for board directors now, who have to guide their organisations to work smarter and not harder. And they do that through using the comparative advantage that the business has got. So if you've got good IT in your business, that's an enormous comparative advantage. You can use that to build the business going forward and reassess priorities and realign them to the things that you know are going to be successful. So the challenge for board directors is to not say, oh, IT just costs money, so let's stop doing it, or anything else just costs money, so let's stop doing it. It's to have the ability at the governance level and the information from within the organisation and about your competitors and about the position in the market and the government's needs and infrastructure and social requirements, all of those things in a complex world, and say, what are we going to do going forward, not what are we not going to do, and focus on the things that matter. So that's my advice for board directors, is to use this time as a time for reappraisal of the direction and the strategy, and use the technologies and techniques you've got. So a focus on IT governance for most government and commercial organisations now should be a priority.
Okay. But, Mr. Khamis, now carrying on with the same question about the pressures now from the financial side. Our two colleagues here who are overseeing IT services are going to come to the corporate management, which you represent, and ask for their budget to stay the same, at least, not to be reduced, because as soon as there is a pressure, the budget gets reduced and projects tend to be put on one side. So they have to convince you that they want to keep the budget as it is, because it's important for them, and part of that budget is IT governance. What would you advise them? How would they approach their senior management so that they can keep going?
In many cases, yes, companies do. The first thing they cut is infrastructure or PCs or IT systems or this or that. But it's not realistic, because technology itself can save money. So if you advance technology in many ways, especially we found out in human resources, structural wise, if you can add more technology and information and know-how, your human resources, and I'm not saying you're firing people, you actually, as the attrition occurs, this information can be taken to a smaller amount of people than before. So you plan it. Everything is based on plan. It's not an immediate. Country-wise is different, but company-wise is also totally different management skills requirement.
Well, I'll give the two directors that we have for IT a question. Either of you can answer. And let me give the same answer that Mr. Khamis just said, but in another way. IT managers or directors have a big ego. They always want to make a big project and look smart and spend so much money and have the sophisticated equipment there, but they are not looking at the benefit side of it for the business, let's say, the economical side factor, and how this is going to affect business. So senior management is always worried, is this project because of their ego, or is this really going to help us in the bottom line? Anyone?
Okay. Answering your question is very simple. You need to concentrate on what business wants. So basically, Mr. Khamis is right. You need to concentrate on the business requirement. Yes, some IT managers or directors would like to go to technology and explore better technology and get all these new buzzwords like cloud computing and. But you need to understand first what is the business requirement. And if you understand what the business is trying to achieve and where the business is going. So you have to align yourself to the business strategy, to your corporate strategy, and understand what this strategy is and where this strategy is going. So you take care of that. If you take care of that, by default, your expenditure will be less. So you will spend less because you're not running after newer technologies just because they are new. Okay. The second thing, the business will be happy because you're delivering what they want you to deliver, and there will be a better understanding of what IT is all about from the board of directors. That's basically my answer.
I'd like to ask Rafiq to advise Mr. Khamis what he can do to make sure that this doesn't happen.
I think the key point is, quite often information technology has been considered as a cost center. I think that philosophy has to be changed, that information technology department is a profit center. That's where the new paradigm of ensuring that IT is run like business. It's important that IT is able to demonstrate that they're providing value, that you should have a system that you're able to realize the benefits of investment in information technology. That's where there is a need to establish accountability. If there is a budget for information technology, that particular budget is monitored to ensure that the benefits are realized.